I'm so interested in the conversation about David Beckham because he, for me, is someone who has transcended his sport. He's arguably the first kind of real builder of a brand outside of just playing football.
Yeah.
When did you first start working with him?
96, 97. I was very much the sorcerer's apprentice. You know, my boss at the time, still a bit of a mentor now, Tony Stevens, was his agent, and I worked for Tony, who was in his 60s at that point in time. And so I very much sat in the passenger seat in my first kind of formative years as I was learning the trade, as it were. And very long story short, I then started kind of just working closer and closer with him on a day-to-day basis. And so, yeah, that relationship just developed. We're exactly the same age. He's a few months older than me. But having come from working with Tony, who was very much a brilliant strategist, but also superb salesman, very much a brand guy, former head of sales and marketing for the Wembley complex. And so he was very much a commercial and a very atypical football agent, but brilliant nonetheless. And so I learnt from him, effectively. The apple didn't fall too far from the tree. And that was very much being thoughtful in how we built an ecosystem around David. And he played a huge part in that, obviously. He was doing the hard work. He was on the pitch doing the hard work and was incredible at how, with all the things that were going on in his world, it just was like this bubble of calmness all the time. And it used to amaze me how he did it, but he did. And, he is totally unique.
How keen was he to not just be a footballer and to have conversations with you about how he can build brands? Or was this something that you guys were driving and you were saying, you just worry about the football and we'll deal with everything else?
No, I think it was a bit of both, really. I think we sat down and we realised that, like, David had, I think we worked out it was 33 different ingredients to what made him, who he was. And it included all sorts of probably more than 33, right? But there was just the ones that we came up with. It was, of course, the obvious things: brilliant footballer, Manchester United, the looks, the wonky teeth at the start, that you then now being married to Victoria, the Spice Girl, all of those things. That cocktail was just so powerful that it was just totally unique. And he had a real appetite for it. And I definitely feel that being married to somebody as commercially savvy as Victoria helped that as well. Very switched on, and she understood the commercial value of brand. And so we were often saying, I think we need to look at this sector, this category, this brand. And there was always rationale and thought behind it. People often say, why did you do Brill Cream? Well, we wanted to talk to the working class man that stood on the terraces at Old Trafford. And so we very carefully constructed a brand portfolio and brand strategy around Adidas technical excellence. Is David a Nike type of athlete? No, he is definitely an Adidas.
Why? What's the difference?
Oh, there's clear differences across all the giant apparel brands. Puma, very much like the lifestyle, funky, cool. Nike, yes, it's a performance brand, but also it has a very different positioning to German technical excellence of Adidas. And that was very much where we felt David sat, and he agreed. And so it was about putting the pieces of the jigsaw together in a really thoughtful way that complemented the bigger picture.
Of all the things you've mentioned, the wonky teeth is interesting. Why would that be on a list of a bunch of things that is kind of marketable?
Because I think it was, at the time, it was something, it's a bit like when I first met Mark Cavendish, and I was connected to him via Lance Armstrong. Right. And Cav came and sat in my office in central London and said to me, just so I'm clear, are you going to get me to stop swearing? And I said, no, I'm not. But that's kind of who you are.
Yeah.
And it's not offensive. It's relatable. And I think at the time, it sounds crazy, but I think at the time, David not having the perfect smile made him relatable, more relatable to people. And sometimes I think you can be over-polished and then you push your authenticity and your relatability away from the man in the street.
And were you and David inspired by US athletes that he saw had kind of built a brand around themselves?
Yeah, very much so.
Who was he looking at in that time?
He loved basketball, really liked basketball. And so looked at course, looked at what Jordan was doing, and he was the gold standard.
Number 23, right?
Yeah, he was the gold standard, exactly. So he loved that, and I think he genuinely believed, and why not? It's a global game, that he could follow in his footsteps, not mirror what he'd done, but certainly follow in his footsteps for sure. And we believed it. We believed it too. Performance is the underpinning part of all of this, right? You can't build a house on sand foundations. Yeah. Fundamentally, the athlete always has the most important job. If you're not consistently performing at the level that he was, then it comes crashing down.
Would you give us an idea of what the strategy would have looked like for David, how you would have kind of gone about? You've done the 33 sort of things, or what he has to offer the world. Then you have to kind of build a strategy around that. So how would that look?
Effectively, we would start off by doing a brand identity. So that means that we sit down and really, sounds stating the blinking obvious, but really understand David as an individual. So understanding his embedded deep values, what are his principles, and teasing all of that out in a sense of, if you were a type of music, what would you be? If you were a car mark, what would you be? What does he see himself as? Because the difference between being a Volkswagen and being a Lamborghini, but why? Why do you see that? And so basically doing a brand identity document that then informs the strategy. So we'd sit and, work through all of those questions, a really deep dive into what he saw and what we saw. And then we'd then find a way. And bearing in mind, there are systems and tools now you can use that makes this easier. Back then, it was very much, pad and pen and, typing away. And then we would have to go to work and identify brands that most aligned with that. And some brands didn't want to get involved because they just didn't understand it. And some really loved it, and they saw a huge upswing. Police sunglasses, 900% upswing in product sales for them when we did the police sunglasses deal. And yeah, it was crazy. And a brilliant partnership, brilliant people at the brand. David loved them. And it was just one of those perfect partnerships, really.
And the police deal obviously was a huge success for police, but also for David. I know I can still, in my head, see those images that you managed to create. Yeah. Was there another deal where you kind of reflect and think, I was so proud that we not just did a deal that was great financially and from a positional sense, but actually, I guess, one that was really ambitious, that other people weren't offering, that you almost saw what the future looked like from a brand athlete perspective, and you delivered?
I think there's probably two that jump to mind for very different reasons. Pepsi is obviously a long-term relationship we'd had with Pepsi, and I think what I was most proud of, and you go back onto YouTube and see some of these, was how far we pushed the creative narrative with the TV commercials. Big budgets, really, really complicated delivery, when fundamentally he's a footballer, he's going to be training every day of the week, trying to deliver those and get those done. Some of the Gladiator Pepsi commercial, there's the Cowboy Pepsi commercial. Some of those bigger TV ads were moments of real pride, because it was hell to actually get them to that place. But
why was it hell?
I just think it's not from Pepsi side. It's just logistically. It's one thing putting on a bit of paper. We've got this idea of, it's using your Pepsi portfolio of athletes, but it was super ambitious.
Was that your idea then?
It was effectively us sitting down with the agency, with Pepsi, with obviously their agency, and talking about the direction of what they wanted to do from a marketing perspective. And so it was definitely a collaborative approach.
See, that's interesting, because I think most people would imagine a brand just comes to you and says, we'll have David. If they pay the money, then they get the athlete. Whereas you were actually, along with David, you were involved in
very much so,
in the kind of the storytelling and the actual execution of these deals.
Yeah,
not
David
just
wanted that.
Not just getting them. Did he?
Yeah, David wanted that. And I've no doubt that Victoria had input into that as well. When they're at home, they're talking about, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? But he definitely had some input into that as well. So, and credit to Pepsi, they believed in us as a group, and they believed in the product, and we did. And so that was incredibly ambitious. And I look back now. Obviously very grainy on YouTube when you look back at them, but I still think, oh, wow, they were stressful times, but great to get them done nonetheless. And I think the other one I would say is Adidas. We did some really interesting things with Adi, and they were really open to doing some non-traditional things, and they were, in terms of like bespoke product, but also merchandise. They were doing some really interesting things that had David's input into them in terms of like boot design, stud design, material usage, all of those kind of things that normally it's just sign your contract, here's your boots. Yeah. David was very, very deeply embedded in what the end product was going to look like and how it could not only help him, but also help footballers generally. And I think he quite liked that he was breaking trail from a performance perspective or a technical perspective with a product. And there's some really interesting, more interesting things that didn't actually come to light. Some ideas like materials on boots and things like how you could like keep pushing the envelope. And he was really into it, really, really into it. And it always impressed me just how much time he gave to the partners that he really, really loved.
So he would challenge you and also challenge the brands to constantly push the envelope.
100%.
And I think that's 100%. A misunderstood element of building this David Beckham brand, because I certainly had this impression that he just got great people around him. He played football and delivered that side of the bargain and let you do everything else. But it sounds like him and Victoria were both really like creatively deeply involved in the direction and the execution.
They were, yeah. I mean, a simple now you look in the shops at like the Adidas Predator, the tongue with the elastic. That was David.
Is that right?
Yeah, the elastic was his idea.
I just assumed that was a boot designer going, you need this elastic here to...
No, it was his idea.
What did he say then?
His idea. He basically amazingly, he never used to lace his boots up. So I never know how he played. They were so loose. He used to basically knot the laces at the top eyelet, cut them off, there'd just be knots, and then he'd pull the tongue right down and obviously put it around the end of the boot. And so if you look at some old pictures, you'll see just how much of his foot is actually exposed. And he wanted none of the laces showing because of purchase on the ball. Yeah. He felt it made a difference to the whip of his free kicks and his crossing. And so something as simple as that was his idea.
So he's also a details guy.
Oh, obsessively so. Yeah. Mark Cavendish, the same, obsessive about details. Obsessive. And I think it's a trait I see in a lot of top athletes that I work with, and ones that I don't work, that I see, Nadal moving the bottles at Wimbledon. That's that OCD element of obsession by design. And I think there's almost, to get to the top level, I think you almost need to have a part of that in you. Yeah. Weirdly, I just think it's one of those things, and I see it as a behavioural trait with lots of people. Hayden Wilde, world champion triathlete, he was the same. Absolutely just anal about my seats 1 millimetre too low. It's incredible. And you can't argue because they're the best at what they do. And,
exactly.
And you can just admire it, and I love that.
All of the evidence proves the fact that they're right.
Yes.
Their attention to the tiny details rather than the big picture that's going to make a difference for them. I think the other thing when it comes to small details is, David can't impact the overall direction of Adidas, but he can impact a tiny detail on a boot that will make a big difference. And I think it's again about him finding the opportunity to have the impact, and it is in those small details. And I think if people are listening to this, they would think, well, this sounds easy. You get one of the world's greatest athletes who just so happens to get better and better at football as those years progress, just at a time when brands are realising the power of an athlete, right? So your job's easy. But actually there's some real pinch points here that I keep thinking about. And the first one is Manchester United, right? The more you ask him to do outside of playing football, I imagine the more Manchester United are, thinking, well, that could be money in our pockets that's going directly to a player, and that used to not happen back in the day.
Yeah.
But also it's time away from kicking a ball, which they might worry about the impact on the pitch. So how was the relationship with Manchester United, and what did you learn about how to manage those kind of relationships in that period?
Yeah, I think it was always fundamentally good, but I think they understood. There were times when it was tighter and a bit more tense than times where it was more relaxed. And, they understood the commercial side of the business, understood that David was who David was. But obviously the football side of the business, Sir Alex just wanted football performance. And so as David grew, the tension got greater and greater, basically. But fundamentally, we always say with all of our athletes, and always have done, especially with David, is that performance comes first. And so we used to have a rule that we wouldn't do anything commercially 2 days before a game. That was our fundamental non-negotiable. When you look at the calendar and you work out how many free days that creates for a team that play in the Champions League and in the Premier League, it's literally like 23 days. So you look over the calendar, look at all your partners, look at the number of commitments you have embedded in those contracts, and fundamentally that creates a headache, because you miss one of those days, you then can't find it again for several weeks, because our promise to the club was that we wouldn't allow David to put commercial stuff before football. Right. They respected that. The commercial people understood that more than the football side of the club. But we also had a duty to grow his brand, and he was an exceptional case. He was delivering, even at the times of the height of pressure that was going on off the pitch for him, he was still, like, somehow would find a way to just block it out and deliver big performances, like, consistently. And it was like his safe place. Got onto the pitch, that's it. Nothing can affect me when I get on the pitch. And so, it was challenging. Absolutely it was. And there were times when we're scrambling to get onto a plane to go to Spain to shoot a 1 hour commercial, then fly back, and you got training the following day. Yeah, that absolutely is going on, for sure. And there's times when we got it absolutely perfect, and there's times when we got it wrong. Flight gets delayed, there's fog at the airport, and oh God, now what are we doing? And so, yeah, there was a lot of hustle going on, that's for sure. But fundamentally, we always understated and over-delivered for the brands that we work with. That was important.
What if I told you that keeping the lights on for millions of people could be made smarter, greener, and more reliable, all thanks to a single platform? Sounds exciting, right? Well, that's exactly what's happening at one of Europe's largest energy grid companies. By using IFS.ai, they're able to spot issues in the electricity grid before they become problems and make data-driven decisions that keep energy flowing smoothly. And the result? Fewer outages and a grid that's ready for the future. This is industrial AI in action, powering real homes and businesses every single day. Visit IFS.ai to find out more. Proud partners of the room where it happened.
I remember the period where you'd done a lot of this great work, and suddenly the narrative around David changed slightly. And even actually from Sir Alex Ferguson, didn't it? About, is this guy more interested in fame or more interested in football? You were right on the inside. Did you ever see a period where David didn't put football first and he was going, actually, don't worry about it. This is such a great commercial deal for me. Let's do this and the football will be fine.
Never. No, he absolutely loved. He loves football.
Yeah,
still loves football. Obviously, I'm not that close to him anymore, but at the time I was with him, absolutely loved football. He loved Manchester United. Never wanted to leave Manchester United. It was his boyhood club. Everyone knows that. But yeah, I mean, we've missed commercial opportunities because I was waiting at the training ground for him to finish doing his 50 free kicks every day, 50 free kicks. Didn't care.
After training.
Didn't care what commitments we had. We're like, we've got to get a flight, Manchester Airport, and we've missed flights and things like that. And explaining that to people, it's often quite tricky. But again, just obsessed with the details, and yeah, just absolutely loved the game and wouldn't allow anything to come in front of it. That's for sure. He's just an absolute consummate professional.
Yeah. And I knew that was the answer, which is why I wanted to ask the question, because I think that people will now see where David Beckham got to if you're an 18, 19-year-old footballer coming through. And you know that great phrase that the military use, where everybody wants to eat, few people are prepared to hunt, right?
Yeah.
Young athletes will see what David had and say, well, that's what I want. And I want it now. And I think sometimes they lose sight of the fact the only reason David got that was because the football never became number two, despite the fact that he was so commercially successful. And I wonder how, with the athletes you work with today, you kind of make them realise that without this, everything else doesn't happen.
Yeah. I totally agree, and I say the same thing to athletes now. And David had like a desire. Some athletes in the world just have that, right? It's just innate. It's a fire that never ever stops, and they're relentless pursuit of excellence, which I love, absolutely love. And he had that, and at no point in time that I was with him, or that it wasn't just me, right? It's a team. It's always we before me, but we had a team of people and they have said the same thing. He's just like never ever let football come behind anything, but like his desire to win, his desire to be the best was just unrelenting. I mean, brilliant. It's infectious. It's really infectious.
And how did that show up in terms of his behaviours and maybe the behaviours you saw from him that you now employ in your own business today?
I saw sacrifice, dedication, and like an obsession, like a real obsession that, he hated to lose more than he wanted to win. And I think that's something that rolls off the tongue very lightly, but very few athletes really, really get it. And I think
why does that make a difference?
I think there's two things in life that you control 100% yourself, right? And I say this to all my athletes, and I say it to my kids. It's like effort and attitude. The two things that you control, that nobody can take from you, and you can control it. And I think David was unwavering with both of those elements. And I think there's a big difference. And I think there's, especially with young players now that say, they see Jude Bellingham and things like that. Yeah, I want to play for England. I want to play for Manchester United. But I think that it comes a lot easier now than it ever used to. And I think that certainly with the rise of social media, the infamy of football and the Premier League, like academy players now, I just don't think quite understand what it took to get to the level that the Davids and the Paul Scholes and the Nevilles and the Shearers and the Owens and they had to go through. And so I do think I'm not saying it's easy. It's not. It's easier in my personal view. And so I just think it takes another level of desire and hunger to get there.
And were you working with David when he lashed out at the World Cup and got the red card?
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
Where were you that day?
I was there.
In the stadium?
Yeah. Helped him get out of France. He flew to New York to see Victoria. So
how quickly did you realise that this wasn't just going to be a red card and people would forget about it the day later?
Oh yeah, no, yeah. I mean, everything is supersized around David at that period of time. That's for sure, because of all the things we talked about, the Spice Girls, Victoria, her doing so well, and things like that. So yeah, it was always going to be cataclysmic, but also, ironically, it was probably one of the defining moments in his career, and I think it's helped make him who he is today, 100%. I think I just think because you can never fully appreciate the highs unless you've really hit the lows. And I think that absolutely was the low moment in his life, the lowest of his football career for sure. And I think everyone likes the fairy tale of the hero that gets knocked down and gets back up again. And I think fundamentally that was the narrative that was playing out. We didn't realize it at the time, of course. So this is in reflection. At the time, it was horrible for him. I mean, we had white powder sent into the office. We had bullets sent into the office, like threatening. I mean, how he played during that period of time is still, to this day, beyond my comprehension. Burning effigies outside of football grounds. And yet he still did. He found calmness and he found a way through it. And actually it's helped define him and create the guy that he is. And so in many ways, we're kind of weirdly thankful for that moment. Most England fans at that time wouldn't have been. But now, when you look back, it's like, God, yeah, that really changed things for him. But I don't know how he did it, because it was pretty horrendous.
And you said you had to help him kind of escape from France.
Yeah, just helped him get away from the competition. You can't take like normal commercial flights. You certainly couldn't after all of that. That's for sure. So it's part and parcel of the job, right? Is helping and protecting and guiding, and he just needed to be around Victoria and family. He needed to shut the world out and just be around people that loved him. And I got that. And obviously he was the English pariah at that point in time. And yeah, obviously came through it brilliantly, but at the time it was incredible.
And I'm not sure you'll ever experience anything quite to that level, but I'm sure you will have moments with athletes since and with athletes you work with today with your business where there will be difficult moments. So I'm interested in how you deal with that. Like, how much did your job for David change the moment he got that red card?
I think one of the changes that has been in certainly talent management is used to be fundamentally there to negotiate contracts, manage a little bit of PR, etc. And now it's completely changed into being, this full service strategist, which includes all of the things we've talked about. But a big part of it is crisis management as well. And there's no education you get on this. You learn through baptism of fire, right? And it's just building up resilience and thicker skin from getting through bumps and scrapes you've had either with David or with other clients, because obviously other things are going on at the same time. And so you learn a new skill set, a wider skill set. And so it was incredibly, incredibly high pressure for me and for Tony and the rest of the team at that point in time. And I guess I was the closest to him because I was just the most relatable in terms of age and things like that. And I spent the most time with him. And so, it stretched my competency, that's for sure, because those things that were happening that had never happened before to anyone. I don't think any agency had to field or manage a situation like that. And I mean, thankfully, social media wasn't really a thing. Because God knows what would have happened if that had been the case. And very much a double-edged sword. But it was full on. It was relentless. Lots of sleepless nights and lots of stress, that's for sure.
And what was giving you the sleepless nights? Because you can't control the fan narrative, right? You can't control the death threats and the burning effigies and the chants in the stadiums. So what was within your control that you were able to add value?
It's more the advice, the advisory side, right? It's the advice and the guidance that you can offer. The pressure, don't get me wrong, that pressure is an absolute privilege, and it has been for my whole career. It's been humbling, the athletes I've worked with, but there is definitely a pressure that comes with, am I making the right decision? Am I making the right decision? And the reality is you never know. You don't have a crystal ball. You can go left or right or straight on. All of those may end up you falling into an elephant trap, or you may just be lucky enough to pick the right way. And so because it was all new, this intensity and this level of media attention, and it was all so negative, like you just felt that you were damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. So you constantly, brain is turning over with us as a team, like, God, should we do that? Should we do that? Should we do a charity appearance? We're thinking about authentic ways to just right the ship. And inevitably it was little and time and little things here and there, pulling back into football, just really focusing on where his safe place was, which was Old Trafford and on the pitch, and then just hoping that time meant it would just go, but it just takes longer when you're at that profile. And so, it was a lot of sleepless nights for a lot of us, to be honest with you, around him, because I'm like, bloody hell, what can we do?
And was it time, do you think, that changed the narrative around David, or was there anything that you did that was fundamentally vital?
There's probably, I look at like David, and I think, and there's probably 1% of what went on in his world that I felt that I owned, in the sense that I'd helped. When I'm sitting watching a game, whether it's the fact I hand carried the boots that he scored the goal against Greece to the game in, like little tiny things that like I keep to myself, that like, I helped there, and that may be 1%, maybe 2%, but fundamentally that's the bit that I own, and that's the bit that I get out of bed for. That's the bit I like and I love doing, but it's not something you talk about at parties. That's for sure. And so I think that supporting and trying to give the right sage advice at the right time is the hardest thing. And of course, you're leaning into a lot of people to do that. So it's certainly not about me. It's about a group of people that we were trying to navigate extremely choppy waters for him.
I don't really understand, though, why you're carrying his boots to that playoff game, because the famous shot is the footballer carries their boot back. Why was he not?
Yeah, because his boots got damaged. And in training, and David used to wear a brand new pair of boots every game. He used to drive Adidas mad, but they were like, okay. So literally, new boots every game. And the boots that he was going to wear, he couldn't wear. So we were scrambling, literally like, can you get me on site to go via Adidas in Stockport on the way to Old Trafford that day? And met him at the tunnel, gave him the boots, then he did that. And it's like, oh yeah, I'll remember that for the rest of my life. I get goosebumps now. I mean, I was literally in that corner with his mum and dad. And when it went in, you could feel the concrete in Old Trafford shaking. It was incredible, absolutely incredible. It's just, and that's why I love the industry so much, because sport is about moments. It's about big athletes delivering in big moments, and there's a litany of fantastic athletes that you can just say, I remember that moment. I remember that. Tiger Woods, the Masters. You can just remember how they deliver under incredible pressure, nonsensical levels of pressure, but somehow they do it, and that's what separates the good from the great.
It's really interesting, isn't it, that you can do all of that work, but it's actually about it's about creating moments, and only the athlete can create the moments. Like I think of, the most remarkable one, the Tiger Woods Nike golf ball, where it sits on the edge, it rolls with the tick. I mean, like if AI had designed it, you would have said, no, that's not realistic. It wouldn't sit perfectly.
That's right.
And then it falls in. Or David against Greece with the ball and that amazing free kick. And again, like that free kick was a vital game in the last moment. He was the guy that took free kicks. It's like if you wrote it, you wouldn't believe that the story. Yeah. And I just think that
you're right. It'd be AI scripted.
Correct. Yeah. But there are certain athletes where you just feel like they've either been blessed or there's something else going on there. Yeah. They're just always the centre of attention. He's one of them.
He was like that, for sure. He was like that. Yeah, without a doubt. But yeah, you're right. It's I still get goosebumps as well. Michael Owen, France 98. I was sitting with his mum and dad when he scored that goal against Argentina. I was like, just moments like that you just cherish and go, yeah, that's why I do it. That's why I do it.
What was it like being part of the Michael Owen train? Because it's a very different story to David's, isn't it? That it was a huge explosion at a young age and then real challenges after that.
Yeah. I mean, brilliant family, really amazing family, Jeanette and Terry, and really, really solid family. And Michael is a real intellect. Like, he's a bright guy and is commercially savvy. And I think I don't ever get the feeling he was ever really loved by the Liverpool fans. I think the Liverpool fans always felt that he loved England more than he loved Liverpool, which is why there was, again, it's personal opinion, but why there was always more love for Robbie Fowler than there was for Michael. Yeah. So I think it was a forced marriage, really. But like crazy talented guy. And I think that sadly it was just the injury, never quite getting the injuries right. And that wasn't on him, that was on the advice from club or specialists, and it just never quite getting right. And because he was so explosive, it meant that unless it was 100% right, he was then always just going to like re-injure. And so, I'm still unbelievable goal scorer and very, very different, like commercially savvy, but so certainly wasn't as, what's the right word? He certainly wasn't as engaged in like building Owen brand, brand Owen brand. He wasn't that as engaged in that. Still wanted to do the big commercial stuff. So did Jaguar and did McDonald's and some of the other big things, Umbro back in the day. And so just very different place. You can't have, in my role, you can't have a cookie cutter solution. You can't just go, there you go. Because it worked for David, then it's going to work for you. Well, you can't do that, of course. There are lots of fundamentals from the brand build around David that, yes, absolutely, I use and take away and have used with Mark Cavendish, I've used with Daniel Ricciardo, I've used in even lesser sports, Maddie Hinch, Olympic, goalkeeper. And so a lot of fundamentals that come out of that we still use. But yeah, everyone is slightly different, and that's also what makes it really interesting once you scratch beneath the veneer and see what really makes the athlete tick.
Well, let's talk then about the modern athlete, because it's a very different era now to the era when you were building David's brand. It's a social media driven era. Are there still the mega stars? Like, I look at the Premier League today and I wonder whether we have a David Beckham, whether we have a Michael Owen.
I think it's one of the big trend shifts. I think back in the late 90s, early 2000s, it was very much about like the mega contracts with the real icons of the sport, very traditional sponsorship. And that was very much top down. So it was only the guys at the top that were picking off those opportunities. And now it's very much like a ground up. It's much more democratized. For sure, there's academy players, they're getting boot deals. Some arguably should or shouldn't, but that's happening. And also now what has happened is that athletes are enterprises.
Yeah.
The top athletes are enterprises. They are very much, it's about equity play. It's about brand fit. It's about authenticity. It's about value alignment. And it's about fundamentally how do you create a commercial ecosystem around yourself that when you come to finish, you've got Jude Bellingham Inc. that is a fully operational running business. And so it's far more sophisticated, but there's a lot more of it happening. It's certainly more diversified than it used to be. That's for sure.
So now I think this is very interesting. How do you, I mean, it really is what David's done actually, because when David stopped playing, there was brand Beckham. And that's why, what happened with Inter Miami happened. That's, Gordon Ramsay's built this amazing ecosystem around himself and this incredible brand. Yeah. And like brand Gordon's just working all the time. They're obviously good mates. And it's the same with David. There's this constant brand just always working.
Yeah.
How do you get an athlete into a position where when they stop doing the thing that they're famous for and well paid for and celebrated for, they remain relevant?
Really good question. I think it's a combination of things, right? I think that we stopped working with David towards the end of his Real Madrid time, and then he started working with Simon Fuller and Victoria's people, and they've done a brilliant job. And I would say that it's certainly down to a collection of things. One, you've got to stay relevant in the media. You've got to, whether that's now digitally relevant or it's traditional media, you've got to stay relevant. But also I think that extending your business influence and your business tentacles into projects that strike a real interest in you, whether it's investing in a sector, investing in a brand. I guess the Miami example is an extreme but brilliant example, but there are lots of micro versions of that. Andy Murray with Castor, and there's other ways that you can, build a business. I think that, and a lot of the time athletes think that when they get to that level that, I'm just going to produce my own range of clothes and they'll sell. It just doesn't work.
So does a good deal then for a modern athlete look more like an Andy Murray type deal where there's already an established business? They're going to deal with all of the nasty business building stuff. You give your brand equity to them.
Yeah.
In return for actual equity. And it might not pay out on day one, but you will have 5, 10, 15, 20% of the overall business.
Yeah.
Those are the exciting deals.
I think so. De-risks it a lot for the athlete. But also, if the athlete's got the appetite, and I'd always encourage this, don't just write a check. Don't just write a check for a business. Like, get involved. Like, understand how the brand works, understand how the brand wants to grow, understand what their objectives are. And actually, there may be areas where you can offer other value apart from just financial. Get in and motivate the team, understand their marketing plan. Get involved and learn, because then from there are other offshoots of ideas that you can use and grow as part of your own ecosystem.
Can we talk about an athlete that I think should be a much bigger brand than he is? Anthony Joshua. And I don't know how involved you get in boxing, but we were talking before today, me and the team, the name Anthony Joshua came up.
Yeah.
And I wonder whether it might be him, might be someone else, whether there's an athlete you look at and think, man, I wish I could get my hands on that athlete because I know that I could do something incredible with that person.
Yeah, but I think that I don't disagree. I think Anthony Joshua is an incredible athlete. I mean, what a specimen. Look at him. He's ticks a lot of marketing boxes for sure. Looks great, both physically and very eloquent in what he does. When I saw him come out at the Olympics, I thought, wow, he's gonna be an absolute world beater, and he's going to be a world beater for a number of years. And it depends on how you measure success, right? Because I think he'd probably sit here and say, yeah, I think I've been successful in what I've done. Has he been as successful as he could have been, or where his potential was tracking to? And I'm not a boxing aficionado, but I certainly am passionate about athletes and brands and what have you. And I do think that he could have been even bigger than he is. So again, he's wrong, he's big, but he could have been another level above where he is now.
And what do you think could have got him to that point?
Well, as I said earlier, I think fundamentally the foundations are about performance.
Yeah.
And you get found out when performance drops, and he's got a good team around him. And I think that had the performances stayed consistent and a couple of those key losses hadn't come when they did, and to the people that he lost to, I think he would have just going on a flight path to the stars. But the athlete is at the centre of it, and if they don't get that right on the court, on the field, in the ring, on the track, then there's not a great deal you can do, really. And I think he had to have kept going, kept winning, not losing, and I think that would have then taken him to the next level.
I agree with you. I think the reason for us having this conversation about him is probably what's happened in the ring rather than outside the ring. I think actually outside the ring they've got it right. But I guess one of the hard things for you is you work with an athlete or you meet an athlete when they're 20, 21, they're at the beginning of their career. And of course they'll be fully focused on the game or the sport or the whatever it is they do to a great level. But as they get more famous, as they get more traction, I mean, you must have seen it where the eyes just fall away from the prize. And I wonder whether that's the difference between the great and the legendary.
Yeah.
Is it the legendary never take their eyes off the prize?
Yeah, I totally agree. It's that just relentless pursuit of excellence every day, in every moment, that I see as something that is consistent with like the greatest, certainly the ones I've been privileged to work with. And I just think they never, ever ease back.
Yeah.
They just like, fine, stick it in the trophy cabinet. What's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? And it's hard as well. I mean, when you look at what's happened around AJ, in the sense that like the opportunities, like the Saudi, I mean, it's eye-watering amounts of money.
Yeah.
So it's not like we were talking earlier about, was the deal that's come in that was like, £1 million. Do we want to do it for David? Well, no, it's not a right fit. Like when somebody's offering you, and I don't know the numbers, but somebody's offering you that reported amounts of money, like that's just takes finance off the table completely. And you'd hope that then you trust the athlete to be able to have laser focus to still keep doing what they're doing. And I think that's probably where the lines have got a bit blurred.
Boxing, it's particularly easy to blur those lines, I think, because of how much of it's an entertainment event as well as a sports event. So we had a guy called Frank Smith. You all heard of Frank, the CEO of Matchroom Boxing. Yeah. And he came on the show and we were talking about the fight with Jake Paul or Logan Paul, I never know.
Yeah, Jake Paul.
Jake Paul. Yeah. It's about the fight with Jake Paul. And I said, like, everyone's just saying this is like a joke for him. And Frank's take, which is a perfectly legitimate one, he said, well, hold on. He's been given a bag full of money to do the job that he does against a guy who can't do the job anything like the level that he can. So you're basically going, there's a load of money, go and just get the job done and do it quickly. Like, who wouldn't say yes to that? And actually, the conversation we've just had for the last hour, I think maybe, I wonder whether you would have had a different approach to that, actually. And it's not, the last thing he needs is another bag full of money.
Yeah.
What he needs is maybe something more credible.
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of it is about timing, right? Because I think that certainly would he have taken that opportunity 5 or 6 years ago when he was absolutely in his pomp? I think he wouldn't have even considered it. And I wouldn't have advised him considering it either. That's for sure. Because again, make the right performance decisions and the money comes after. It will come totally if you're good enough. And he clearly was good enough. So I think there was a timing thing for sure. But yeah, I think it was madness on both sides. I mean, he could have killed him, which was absolutely crazy. And the damage he did do, bloody hell.
I know. So even now, you wouldn't have advised AJ to do that at this point in his career?
No, I don't think so.
Why not?
I look at it and putting the money aside, clearly he's earned already a lot of money.
Yeah.
So putting the money aside, what does he gain out of it? Does it move his brand forward? No. Does it change any brand essence around AJ? No, I don't think it does. If anything, it maybe even takes some fraction back. It actually dilutes it, in my view. And I look at it and I go, oh, you've kind of lost that real polish and that real shine.
Aura.
Yeah, great word, aura, for me. Anyway, and I just, well, why would you do that? I don't know why you'd do that. And again, I don't know what his financial circumstances are. So there's probably a big part of that was that. But if you can divorce it from the money because he's already done a lot, then I would have said, yeah, that's not sure. In terms of just your brand, that's not going to help your brand. Can't help with the financial discussion, that's separate. But in terms of your brand, I think it would actually put a dink in it, for sure.
On the flip side, and sadly you're not allowed to talk about one of the athletes you work with here, right?
Yeah.
I would like to know who outside of your stable you look at and think they are just getting it right in the modern era.
Yeah.
Who is nailing it at the moment, do you think?
Yeah. Lindsay Vonn.
Interesting. That is a really interesting shout. Because I've seen her, she's already back in the gym, like doing leg presses on a broken leg.
I know.
So why is that so good for her brand then?
I just think I'm a big fan. I'm a big admirer of hers for a long time, and she like literally in spades nails the performance piece. Right, she's the GOAT, absolutely superb. But also from a marketing perspective, all the obvious things she nails. Smart, eloquent, good looking, all of those things, the obvious stuff. But also I just think she's like so authentic, really, really authentic. And I think that much like Cav has that as well, like that authenticity that you feel like you could go to the pub and sit and chat to her and just, it'd be like a normal conversation. She's not like a multiple world champion, Olympic champion, etc. And she also has, what I really love about how she positions herself and her brand is that she's evolved. As the industry has evolved and it's become more digital first, she's evolved. And so like her social output is superb. Her brands and her partners, you can see that they're really, really embedded in her journey. And I look at her and think, yeah, she's nailing it, absolutely nailing it, and credit to her and her people.
I love that you've shouted her out, actually, because I think that, again, lots of people wouldn't have known her name before the last few months because they weren't into skiing. She's now transcended skiing by proving herself to be just a kind of a superhuman, like almost in the maddest of ways, trying to do what she did at the Winter Olympics. Yeah. But that's a story for the ages now. That's the documentary in 5 years' time. That's a Netflix deal.
Totally agree.
That's like there's your future.
Totally agree.
Mapped out.
Yeah, totally agree. Who do you think?
I'm not going to be able to say anyone as good as
Can't say any Norwich players.
As Lindsay Vonn. Well, not Josh Sargent. That's for sure. Who do I think is nailing it at the moment? I think Max Verstappen, but only because I think it's Max Verstappen, right? Because he's almost refused to get carried away with the way that a modern athlete can be. Yeah. Like he doesn't want to do social media videos. Yeah. He's not going to go to the premiere of F1 the movie because he's already busy enough. And every other driver turns up and he's like, well, why do I want to go to that? I'm not getting paid and I want to be with my family. Yeah. The new cars come out for the start of the new F1 season. And people don't understand there's huge pressure on those drivers to say the right thing to protect the sport and the image of the sport. And there will be people saying, come on, just ease off a bit. Yeah. And he's just being really honest. He just says, I'm not sure I want to be in the sport forever. You know, it's not necessarily that he stands out in terms of he's creating a brand that has loads of value. Like it's probably a harder job for someone like you because he's not necessarily playing the game. Yeah. But I think Max, a bit like Lindsay Vonn, has total authenticity. Like I think what he says is what he believes. Yeah. There's no BS with him. Yeah. It's that Dutch abruptness, isn't it? Absolutely. It's the Dutch abruptness, but also I think it gives you, in a world where so much of your freedom is stripped away because you're a famous athlete. Yeah, so with Daniel. I think it gives you freedom. It's crazy. You tell me about that. I'm so interested because I obviously knew Daniel when he was first coming through in F1. Yeah. Loved him at Red Bull. I thought potential world champion. He would be on my list of who you think could have been. Yeah. I think could have been. What happened? So I got introduced to Daniel through Lewis's lawyer. Yeah. Who called me one day and said, look, I've got this guy who's in Formula One, needs help, like building his brand, sorting himself out commercially, and I think you're the perfect fit for him. Would you be interested? And I said, yeah. I mean, what I know about Formula One, you can write on the side of a stamp, but I'm also very nimble and I can learn fast, like I did in cycling and in other sports I worked in. And so, met
met Daniel. That went really well, and he bought into like my thinking of how we can help him in a very challenging and rights restricted sport. Right, very, very tricky to do that with an athlete, but it's fundamentally dependent on performance more than anything else. And so we started working together. Really, I think he is unbelievable. Like, just a brilliant, brilliant character.
He's in my top 5 favourite sports people I've ever met and worked with.
Yeah,
as a guy,
I totally agree.
Yeah,
I totally agree. Just everything you'd want in an athlete.
So what era was this when you worked with him?
So it was the last 6. So it was he was with CAA for the last kind of 2 or 3 seasons. So it's the 5 or 6 years before that, basically. So
was he at Red Bull?
He was at Red Bull. So just gone to Red Bull.
Right.
Just gone to Red Bull. And yeah, it was interesting because there were lots of cultural challenges because I was seen as an outsider to Red Bull, which is fine. I quite like that.
How did you deal with that?
Just like I always do, just graft and just let my actions, do the talking for me, and did the deal, did the work. And eventually they realized that I was going to be around and was credible. I may not be from the F1 family or, have a wealthy father that was in the sport, but they knew I was credible, and actually took a deal to the team, did a team deal for them, which they were grateful for. And so, yeah, I had to swim up current for a while, to be honest with you. And my team were the same. We were armchair Formula One fans, really. And Daniel was really interesting because he's super talented, brilliant personality. The team were over-leveraging him massively because it was the time when Max and him were together, right? And Max was no, I'm not doing it. Daniel was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And one of the things I had to teach him very early on is the power of saying no. It's okay to say no. If you don't say no, people don't value you.
Which the team wouldn't like.
Yes.
Because he was valuable because he said yes.
Yeah. And I think there was a period of discomfort from him where he was like, really? I'm not sure I should be saying no. Well, listen, you have to take a position on it at some point, and otherwise they're just going to keep coming at you. And
why does that increase his value?
Because I think that scarcity increases value. And if the team don't know they've got carte blanche, open feeding on Daniel's time, they now have got this. They now come to him with opportunities that are actually worth his time. And he learned that pretty quickly. And I just always felt with him, super talented driver, right? Super talented. I always felt he was fighting the Max machine. And he never wanted to be number 2 at any point in time, which I get. And his father was fairly influential in that as well. He was really close to Daniel, and, they thought pretty strongly about not being in Max's shadow. Not that the team positioned it as that, but you could clearly see they thought that Max was, the bright young star that was going to dominate for years to come. And so he just wasn't comfortable with it and felt he needed a new challenge.
So Max wasn't like a contracted number 1 driver.
No.
But it was like Daniel just felt the energy in the team was behind Max?
So. I think it's the energy in the team. It's what's being communicated, through people in the team. And sometimes probably him manifesting it himself, but fundamentally they were allowed to race each other. And I think Max was offered X and Daniel was offered Y. And he was like, well, don't think I'm that much different to him. And so he just decided that getting away and starting afresh was the way to go. I didn't agree with it. I thought that staying at the team was the right thing to do. But I think he recognised that I was coming from a commercial brand perspective, and the decision was fundamentally embedded in racing and race opportunity. And so I acknowledge that I'm not the one that can throw a huge amount of light into that space.
The thing is, in some ways, I have more respect for Daniel for making a sporting decision than a commercial decision. If he'd have gone to Renault and gone, well, I literally want to, because the criticism was he'd gone for the money, right?
Yeah.
But what actually the reality that you're telling us is he went from a sporting perspective because he didn't want to be in the shadow of Max Verstappen.
Yeah.
And he thought this would allow him to...
That's right. And the money at the levels they were at, like the money was de minimis, the difference.
Right.
So actually, it was all about the drive, really. It was all about him being the star, number one driver. That's what he wanted. And he wanted the attention, and he wanted the resource, put into him. So at those levels, like we're talking a few million here or there, which I'm not being laissez-faire about, but at that level, it's all about the drive for him.
So what went wrong?
I mean, you know better than I do, Jake, but you're so dependent on the team, on the car. There's so many other factors. I mean, it's the most individual team sport in the world, Formula One, I believe. And you're so reliant on so many things. And if all of those stars don't align, then you can fall well short of the performance that's required. And I think that they just never quite got the car right. And then it just starts going from there, really. And if you stop winning, then inevitably the sport keeps moving forward, right? There's the next hot shot coming through. It's Oscar Piastri. It's whoever the next one is coming through. And so you stand still in Formula One, you're moving backwards. So I think that's what just inevitably started to happen, really.
And in the way that you were able to kind of insulate and shield David from the challenges he had after his red card at the World Cup, how did you try and insulate Daniel from the fact that performances were an issue?
I think he was really honest,
Yeah.
right, with himself. So he knew. He knew. So it was not like you were talking to him about things he didn't know well himself. And so I think, if anything, he was putting more pressure on himself than he was on, than from anywhere else. He just knew. He was so driven, forgive the pun, but he was so driven and so determined to win that he was putting all of that, on himself. But the most relaxed person I've ever met. I mean, I remember being in Austin, and it was the night before the Grand Prix, and obviously, as you know, in qualifying, the drivers are trying to be as light as they possibly can, and then in like 24 hours, they're trying to get as heavy as they possibly can for the downforce. And we agreed to go for some ribs in Austin, right? And like Daniel is like literally eating 4 mains. We're then thinking with my colleague, Jonathan, who worked with me with Daniel, and we were like, oh, it's 10 o'clock. He's probably going to, go to bed now and get rested up. And then we like finish this meal, and he said, oh, look, my mate's playing in a band like down the road. And we're like, shouldn't you be, no, it's all right, mate. It's all good. It's cool. Let's just go and pop and see him. Go down the road, live band. His mate is done. Maybe he's obviously playing guitar and singing in this band in this like sawdust, on the floor bar in Austin. Wow. And he's there until like, 11:30, 11:45, and then just walks back to the hotel just casually. And then obviously podiumed in Austin that year. And I just like blew my mind. Just that's how he handled pressure, just doing things that he really loved doing away from the sport.
It's great that you got the podium. I just wonder whether, if you'd have gone to bed at 9 o'clock, could he have got first? I wonder whether, in the way that David Beckham never forgot about football first, I wonder whether maybe Daniel had forgotten that the number one thing is the
I think also, I mean,
the racing.
It's a fair observation. What he was always consistent in his communication with us is that when he finished driving, he didn't want to be around the sport.
Yeah. And he's shown that that's the truth.
Yeah, I mean, literally, completely anonymous. I don't know what he's doing, or he's building his brands and things like that, but he was very clear that he didn't want to become a commentator, didn't want to work in a team, didn't want to do commercial appearances. So, he was very clear about that, and he's gone on to kind of do it. It's almost like it was a 100-mile-an-hour hobby rather than a job. But shame, because he's just brilliant individual. I mean,
and why was he such a marketing dream, Daniel? Because he was and is.
Yeah, he is. Lots of reasons. Charm, smile, infectiousness, personability, sense of humour.
Yeah.
I just think, again, just always stayed relatable to people. He was the one driver at that point in time that I genuinely felt any fan could feel they could just walk up to him and have a conversation.
And they actually could, because he's such a nice guy.
And exactly. Yeah. So it was authentic. It wasn't forced.
Yeah.
And there was there was none of the BS around, I'm a Formula One driver walking down the paddock, and keeping people at bay. He was very much very approachable, and that's what made him so unique, really.
I've loved this conversation. It's so interesting. Like the life you've lived, you get one life, right? Do something with it that is enjoyable, fills you with purpose.
Just trying to make a difference, really, quietly in the background.
You've done all those things, and it's so nice and very rare to get you to talk on camera about it.
Thank you. I'm humbled to be on the show. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Good man.
Yeah, thank you.
That was great.